It was a cloudy Thursday afternoon when Melissa Carter, a busy single mother of two, noticed something odd on her 13-year-old daughter's neck. It was just a small red bump, slightly raised, barely the size of a mosquito bite. "Probably just a zit," Melissa muttered to herself, sipping lukewarm coffee as she tried to meet her latest work deadline. Her job as a freelance graphic designer often meant late nights and early mornings. Between school runs and grocery shopping, a small blemish didn't seem like a big deal. Her daughter Sophie wasn't complaining either. In fact, she hadn't even noticed the bump until her mom pointed it out. "Huh, weird," Sophie said, inspecting it in the mirror. "Doesn't even hurt." So Melissa let it go. Over the next few days, the bump didn't go away. It grew. By the following week, it had become the size of a marble. Melissa tried home remedies, warm compresses, tea tree oil, even a little dab of toothpaste at night. But nothing worked. "Mom," Sophie said one morning, tugging at her hoodie, "I think it's getting worse." Melissa looked closer. The bump had developed a small, dark dot in the center. It looked almost like a blackhead, but deeper. Still, Sophie had no fever, no pain, and no other symptoms. "We'll give it a few more days," Melissa said. "If it gets worse, we'll go to urgent care." Sophie didn't argue, but her eyes lingered a second longer in the mirror than usual. Something about it unsettled her. 3 days later, Melissa was brushing her teeth when she heard a scream from the bathroom. She rushed in and found Sophie standing in front of the mirror, pale and shaking. "Mom, it moved," she whispered. "What?" "I swear, I felt it twitch." Melissa forced a laugh, though her stomach clenched. "It's probably just inflammation pressing on a nerve. Come on, let's go get it checked out." At urgent care, the doctor took one look and raised an eyebrow. "This isn't a typical pimple," he said, pressing gently around the area. "It's firm, not filled with pus." He asked a few questions, took photos, and recommended seeing a dermatologist. Melissa sighed. Another appointment, more time off work. But something in the doctor's tone had shifted. He seemed uneasy. 2 days later, they were in the office of Dr. Rebecca Nguyen, a specialist in skin disorders. After a brief exam, she ordered a biopsy. Melissa's heart sank. "Is it serious?" Dr. Nguyen paused. "I don't want to alarm you. It could be an embedded cyst, or possibly a parasite." "A what?" Sophie gasped. "Let's wait for the test," the doctor said gently. "Try not to panic." That night, Sophie cried herself to sleep. Melissa stayed awake, scrolling horror stories online, botflies, rare skin conditions, even cancer. She knew Googling was a bad idea, but she couldn't stop. At 2:17 a.m., Sophie came into her room, trembling. "Mom," she whispered, "I felt it again. It moved." Melissa pulled her close and turned on the lamp. The bump had swelled slightly, and the center looked darker, almost like a tiny hole. Enough was enough. The next morning, Melissa brought her to the emergency room at Portland General Hospital. They were quickly referred to a surgical specialist. The moment the surgeon, Dr. Alan Brooks, saw it, his face went still. "We're going to numb the area and remove it today," he said calmly but firmly. Sophie clutched her mother's hand as the nurses prepped her. "You're gonna be okay, sweetheart," Melissa whispered, trying not to cry. As they laid Sophie on the table, the doctor leaned in close with his tools, examining the lesion under a magnifying lens. Then he blinked and leaned back slowly. "Get me forceps," he said. Everyone in the room grew quiet. The doctor gently inserted a tool into the center of the bump and began pulling. What emerged was not pus, not fluid, but something alive. Melissa screamed. For a moment, time froze in the operating room. Dr. Alan Brooks stared at the wriggling shape held between the forceps. About an inch long, pale gray with faint stripes, it squirmed as if resisting its removal. One nurse gagged. Another turned away. "What is that?" Melissa stammered, barely able to speak. Dr. Brooks gently dropped the creature into a sterile dish. "It's a larva, most likely a botfly." "A what?" Sophie cried out, her voice trembling even as the anesthesia still numbed her neck. "A botfly. They're typically found in Central and South America," the doctor explained, frowning. "They lay eggs on mosquitoes. When the mosquito bites a human, the warmth causes the egg to hatch, and the larva burrows into the skin." But we've never been to South America, Melissa cried. We live in Oregon. Dr. Brooks nodded slowly. It's extremely rare here, but it's not impossible. You could have come into contact with an insect that was carrying an egg while camping, or even through a traveler's luggage. These things can hitch rides. Sophie looked like she was about to faint. There was something living in me. Melissa squeezed her daughter's hand. It's gone now, baby. It's out. Back at home, the shock hadn't worn off. Melissa made Sophie's favorite dinner, mac and cheese with hot dogs, but neither of them had much appetite. Does it hurt? Melissa asked, looking at the small bandage on her daughter's neck. Not really, Sophie replied. It just feels creepy. Melissa nodded, guilt pressing heavily on her chest. I should have taken you seriously from the beginning, she admitted. I thought it was just a pimple. I'm so sorry. Sophie shrugged, but her eyes said she appreciated the honesty. You didn't know, she said softly. It was weird. Even I didn't think it was serious until it moved. Later that week, they returned to Dr. Nguyen's office for follow-up. She confirmed that the wound was healing nicely and that no other larvae were detected in Sophie's body. Cases like this are rare, but they're real, the dermatologist said. You were lucky to catch it early. If it had matured more, it could have caused a serious infection, or worse. Sophie shuddered. That's disgusting. But important, Dr. Nguyen said, glancing at Melissa. You trusted your instinct eventually. That's what matters. The experience changed both mother and daughter. Melissa, once quick to dismiss small complaints in the whirlwind of her busy life, now paid closer attention to every detail, every ache, every odd symptom, every feeling her children voiced. It wasn't about paranoia. It was about listening. Sophie, once embarrassed by acne and insecure about her appearance, became more resilient. What she went through wasn't just gross, it was traumatic. But she survived it, and that gave her a quiet kind of confidence. 2 months later, Sophie stood in front of her 8th science class giving a presentation titled, When a Pimple Isn't a Pimple, The Truth About Parasitic Larvae. She brought slides. She even showed a censored image of the larva that was removed from her neck. The classroom gasped. Some students turned away, but everyone listened. My mom thought it was nothing, she said with a nervous laugh. Even I thought it was a regular zit. But sometimes your body's trying to tell you something. And when it does, you better listen. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Her teacher, Mr. Reynolds, gave her an A+ on the spot. That night, Melissa tucked Sophie in and kissed her forehead. You were amazing today, she said. Sophie grinned. I didn't throw up during the presentation, so that's a win. They laughed. The scar on Sophie's neck was barely visible now, a faint reminder of what she'd been through. But the lesson? That would last a lifetime.